So welcome. Welcome to you all. It's really lovely to see so many familiar faces and, well, not faces, but see your names so we can imagine your faces. So welcome to the webinar. And if you are joining us for the first time, a very warm welcome to you too. Those of you who are familiar with our webinars will know that you are on listen only mode. So you can relax. Say, have a cup of tea, have your lunch. So we are recording the webinar, so we will put it up on our YouTube channel at the end of this. And if you do want to send comments or questions as we go through, please do you can use the chat. You can also use the Q&A, and I will do my best to keep track of those as we go through. So I'm delighted to be joined by a very good friend and colleague, Dr. Brodie. So to talk all about psychological safety, and we have been observing that the chances of us covering everything in 30 minutes is going to be a challenge. So we're imagining this may be something that we talk a little bit more about at some future point. So, and rather than me introduce you, Brodie, I'm going to pass over to you to introduce yourself, because I'm sure that will sort of naturally take us into why we're here talking about psychological safety.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz, and hello to everybody. I see some people from all over the world, so that's wonderful news, and thank you for joining. So yes, I'm Dr. Brodie, still getting used to the title because becoming a doctor in coaching is quite a recent thing for me, but something I'm incredibly proud of. So where did I start off? And I was thinking back, I started training with Damien, I don't know, it's like 15, 16 years ago, to become a coach, and really changed my world, I suppose, in many ways. At the time I was working in corporate world, I led multiples of teams, and it was all about getting really good team performance. And for me, having the right people in the right place, doing the right thing for a team is just so easy to lead them. But it does take quite a bit of work. And so for me, that sort of becoming a coach and adapting my leadership style to be more coaching then led me to becoming really focused on coaching. So executive coaching, and that's sort of in the business environment. So performance coaching, leadership coaching, but also very passionate about teams. And I think that's from leading teams and the complexity they bring. My research was really focused on team coaching and team mindfulness, which was a really interesting thing for me to explore, but actually led to this point around there is thoughts that team mindfulness is an antecedent to psychological safety. So that developing of psychological safety within the environment that we work. So it kind of leads on from my research really neatly. And really, I suppose, and actually, just before I go any further, because I'm not sure if we did mention this, was please, if you can get to grab a pen and some paper, because I'm just going to walk you through an exercise during these 30 minutes to help you sort of reflect and experience what we might be talking about. So, what do we actually mean by psychological safety? Because we use it quite a lot, and yet we don't always understand what it might be. So I am going to share some slides to help the thought process really, and really encourage you. I'm sure many of you will already have your pen and paper in terms of that reflective space, but really start thinking about, and I'm going to look to Liz and go, have I done this the right way around? Can you see my...
We can see all of the slides, so...
Okay, so that's very interesting, isn't it? We just got it right. And then
we tried this a couple of times before everyone arrived. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so what do we actually mean by psychological safety? So many of you may know the work by Professor Amy Edmondson. She researched actually not psychological safety. She was actually looking at hospitals and performance in teams. But what she noticed was actually quite often the teams that were reporting higher incidents were actually creating more of a safe space to have conversations and improve performance, which didn't add up to her, because she's like, why are they reporting so much and yet being so high in performance? So she came up with this definition, a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And really, that's what we are going to delve into in more detail. But before we do that, I just want to position this. You know, we are coaches here. And so I really want you to start thinking about this from multiple lenses. So when I'm talking through this, I'd be curious for you to think about, firstly, as a coach, you know, and actually, how do you go about creating a safe space for your coachees to speak up, be that an individual, be that a team? You could also then bring that the lens of when you're coaching that leader, what are you noticing about the safe space they're creating or the safe space they feel they are in? And also then thinking about it if you're a team coach from that lens of what am I noticing? What's playing out there within that environment? Or in fact, have you been in a team where it felt okay to speak up with ideas or mistakes, or it didn't? And then the final piece is that organizational piece. You know, so when you go into a new organization, or if you're in an internal coach, what are you experiencing there? So like I said, it really is just to bring different lenses to our conversations. So how might we experience psychological safety in the workplace? And it's really important to understand this as well, because quite often we can think about it being in a group of people, but actually it starts within our own experiences of life and what's gone on. We may feel we're not included, or past experience may mean, oh, I've experienced that before, therefore I don't feel included. So it can be something we hold within us. So it's really important to think about how we might show up in a new situation, and do we feel safe to speak up? Because that could be what's playing out with that leader you're coaching or those teams you're coaching. It also sits between two people. So for some people, there might be a real essence of safety to speak up, share things, share when you've got it wrong, and yet it might not be with others. So it can sit between two people, but it also can sit amongst a group of people. And that might be within the team, it might be within a group that you're new, or it might be within that committee that you work in, or it might be within that organizational lens. So again, it's quite nuanced about where and how we might experience it. And therefore it can have an impact on how we show up and how we experience or share things with some and not with others. So this can have negative consequences on our self-image, on our status, or on our careers. And again, we might be working with people, might be working with leaders that actually don't feel safe to speak up. So just thinking about that as a coach. But when we do have it, of course, it opens up and supports that real lovely open communication and leads to a great way of socially constructing ideas, innovation. Yeah, so it has that opportunity to really build, and that sort of creative lens of it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, Liz, but I disagree because of this, this, and this. How about that? Oh, yeah, that's a great idea. So again, you can see how beautiful it can create such creative thinking within where we work. So just thinking about this, and when it doesn't feel right, and I love this quote. And the irony of this, I think it's quite ironic, is it comes from an anonymous board member of Tesla. So imagine what it must feel like being in that environment. And there's a way of thinking about this, and you may have experienced this before as well, is sometimes there are these crouching tigers that you might have experienced. This might be as that team member yourself. It might be hearing the language of that leader you're coaching. You know, they might have said, oh, my door is always open. Oh, that's really interesting. How often do people actually walk over the threshold to come and talk to you? Because some of that is telling you some data about that level of psychological safety. So just thinking about those experiences you know, you might be in a meeting and then somebody might say, if anyone's got a question, well, then I'll move on. So we're not creating that opportunity for people to speak up. There might be, so we're all in agreement, right? And again, somebody might be, well, I'm not ready to speak up yet. So again, just thinking about the opportunities as coaches that we hear, but also if you are that internal person, what are you recognizing? This all leads to this piece around impression management. So what people will be sort of navigating through, either consciously or unconsciously, is they will be trying to manage what people think of them. So to avoid looking ignorant, I just won't ask any questions. To avoid looking incompetent, I'm not going to admit any weaknesses. To avoid looking intrusive, well, I won't offer up any ideas. Or to avoid looking negative, I'll stop critiquing the status quo. So again, you can start seeing how people might shut down because they're trying to manage the impression they're giving to others. And that might be, like I say, because you're a new team member, but it might be because there's shift and change going in the organization that really has an impact on how people work together. So I think it's really important to start thinking about this on the different levels. And with Amy's work, she's identified 4 key components that really start building into this psychological safety aspect. And in fact, she's worked very hard with some organizations to actually develop a tool that she can measure it, which is really, really interesting. But the 4 key areas that she talks about is firstly this willingness to help others. So that sort of teaming aspect. This is the degree to which people are willing to help each other and really step out of that normal way of working and do something a bit different. That might be to do recognizing somebody's workload. Can I help you with that? Rather than head down, just carrying on. The other aspect is inclusion and diversity. So this is the degree to which you can be yourself and be welcomed for this. So there might be that inclusion of your thoughts, your experience, previous knowledge, and actually that's welcomed into the space. So really starting to think about, how am I doing that as a coach? What lenses might I bring into a conversation that I might not have before? The next one is attitude to risk and failure. So the degree to which it is permissible to make mistakes. So again, just noticing when you're coaching somebody, whether they feel it's okay to make a mistake or not in the environment they're in. Okay, so what might that be telling us? So again, it's just sort of bringing a slightly different lens to how we might coach somebody. Equally, it might be around, if you're part of a team, how are you experiencing that attitude to risk and failure within the team? Is it okay to say, well, this didn't work well, how do we make it different? What ideas have we got? And then the final one is the open conversation. So that's the degree to which difficult and sensitive topics can be discussed openly. And I think open conversation can be misaligned, really. We just say, yeah, we talk about everything and anything. Well, that's great, but actually, do you start having that candid debate? Do you really start having those tough conversations in service of, and it is in service of, making sure we're doing things the right way and how we can do them better? So I think it's really important to recognize that it's not just about, psychological safety is a really nice place to be and we don't have difficult conversations. It isn't like that. It's being able to have those conversations and be accountable for them. So it's not an either or, it's an and. And this is really key to a model I'm going to share with you now. So it'd be great if you can grab your pens and paper. Because there's no trade-off here. So if you could just draw very quickly these 2 lines, and then slowly but surely I'll build on this model. And again, this is work of Amy Edmondson. So as you can see, on one axis, we've got the level of psychological safety. So bottom is low, and if it's really high, it's up at the top. And then on the other axes, we have motivation and accountability. Okay, so low to the left, high to the right. So my first question to you is to reflect on, if you were in a team or if you were part of a group and there was low psychological safety and low motivation and accountability, how might you be feeling? What are some of the feelings or behaviors you might experience? We class this as that apathy zone. So this is low psychological safety, low motivation and accountability. And if you want, you can pop some of those in the chat.
I notice, Brodie, even as you talk about it, I get a physiological response as well. I can almost feel my posture changing. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Any other thoughts coming in, Liz, at all?
Yeah, so we've got lots. So checked out, disheartened, disengaged, sadness, withdrawal, defensive, anxious, silent, drained, not taking responsibility, protective of energy, not valued, unwilling to take the initiative.
Lovely.
So
And we
lots and
can
lots.
see the impact this has, actually that's individually, but imagine that across an organization, and actually people don't feel that they can contribute, or there's that sense of, I just don't feel like I want to be here, or I'm not motivated to do this.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
next,
And
the next
sorry, just one other actually, and Aisha has put in, as a woman of colour and visibly Muslim, she said it's an environment she's often in. So that comes back to your inclusion and diversity point.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for sharing. I think, just being able to say that actually is important for us all to hear. And especially when we're coaching, again, just sort of thinking, okay, so, the point before where some things are within, between, and a group, what we've experienced in life before can mean we show up in a certain way, or feel we need to.
Yeah.
So the next one I want to take you to is the comfort zone. So we've got high psychological safety, but low motivation and accountability. What might that feel like?
Cozy but unchallenging, boring, coasting, cruising, comfy, familiar. Speaking up without consequence.
Yeah,
It's an
nice.
interesting one.
Yeah, lovely. Lovely.
Unchallenged, good relationships but little challenge. Bored exclamation mark, purposeless,
Yeah.
lack of growth, and actually, so potentially still feeling a bit unsafe or a bit fake.
A bit fake. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So a willingness to express ideas, but perhaps not proactive enough to take the initiative.
Yeah.
And stuck. So
Stuck.
it's interesting, because comfort zone could often conveys a place of comfort, but actually some of those things that people are sharing don't sound like it is a place of comfort.
Yeah, and when we go through the whole model, we can see that it's, sometimes we do need to be in one place for a short period of time, but then we need to get to another place. So actually, if I take you to this space of anxiety, what does it feel like to be there? What are your emotions and behaviors when you're in that place of anxiety? So low psychological safety, but high motivation and accountability.
Yeah. So Rachel straight away has put stressed, on
Yeah.
edge, scared, unsettling, fight, flight, oppressive, frustrated,
Yeah.
imposter.
So that sort of leads to the, sometimes if we can step into that comfort zone for a while, it's like a rebuilding space of like, do you know what? I just need to just feel comfortable and safe for a bit.
Yeah.
But obviously, if we stay there too long, we've already heard, actually, I don't feel motivated. It's a nice place to be. Is it becoming a bit fake? So actually just sort of saying in certain stages, it's good to be in some of these places. But the aim is this learning zone. And so actually just the language people were talking about is I don't feel motivated. Well, actually, if we could create that safe space of psychological safety where we can have those really good conversations about the difficult things, as well as motivation, accountability, we have some control. We have the ability to sort of start scoping out what's important to us. The chances are we're really invested. You know, I'm learning, I'm enjoying learning from each other, we're pushing things a little bit, but it's okay because we're looking after each other here. So it's a really great way to start thinking about, well, actually, you know, even when you're coaching a leader, you know, you could bring this model out and sort of go, where might you be? How might that be feeling? Or you can do it with a team as well, where you can actually get a team, you know, each team member has an opportunity, and it might be different for different people. But again, just recognizing that somebody might feel in the anxiety zone, somebody else is in the comfort zone. Okay, so what needs to happen and change here?
Mm.
And it's fluid, you know, it's not static. We have to work at it and build it. And that kind of leads me on really to this place of, so what are the drivers that we have an opportunity with? Well, obviously leadership behavior, you know, how a leader interacts. If I talked about those crouching tigers, you know, well, my door is always open, but nobody ever walks through the door. You know, what is that telling you? Or actually the person or the leader that struggles to manage their emotions, you know, and actually things build, they don't say much, and then there's an explosion. Well, how does that impact somebody feeling safe enough to speak up about a mistake? Team relationships, you know, these are great ways, again, if we can start understanding which areas or how team members are feeling. And as I mentioned, the Fearless organization, they have a way of measuring team psychological safety. So again, it's a great way to just share something back. And then in that organizational context, so there will be pockets in an organization where in some areas there's probably high and others low, but overarchingly, what message are we giving? What do we need to think about in terms of the organization? And as coaches, if we're internal, what's our role within that? How do we hold up the mirror? And equally, if we're external, how do we do something very similar? So, you know, just, oh, I'm noticing this and I'm noticing that. And, you know, that's all we can do and all we can share. But it is within our gift to bring some light to it and a lens on it. Which then really drives me into the, so what can we do? And fundamentally, this is about how do we help create the conversations? You know, how do we help create the inclusive conversation? How do we help them start being a bit more curious about different perspectives and building on those high quality interactions? This is another interesting model that sort of builds on the one that I just shared with you. But, you know, this is around, again, just seeing this in a visual way. So if we look at the bottom here, we've got the old thinking. So actually, if there is that sense of apathy, you can also have that sense of politeness within a group or within teams or within people's conversations. Nobody's prepared to really say too much until they do, which creates this sort of breakdown in behavior. It can become quite cyclical. So it's that, you know, how do we help people to have those conversations and reduce this old thinking behavior playing out? Politeness, breakdown. Then we go back to just being polite because we're too scared to speak up again. And what we're trying to do is actually move them from that place of that type of interaction to moving towards, you know, inquiry. We've already talked about it actually in that learning space. You know, people are more open, they're interested. So from the breakdown space, we're really trying to shift them into provoking well, how else could you view this? What else might somebody be thinking? And really trying to shift the old behaviors into this place of inquiry and create that flow. Because actually, if we've got a sense of it's comfortable and we can have nice conversations, how can we just chip away at it and just bring an edge to it to enable a more curious way of thinking about things? So it's just a really great way of thinking about what might be playing out in the organization, in the team, or with the leader, and actually what's my role here? You know, and as coaches, what are our strengths? You know, it's about that ability to really listen, with attention and curiosity. Think about how we can share our inquiry, can't even say it, to create new insights for them. You know, offering that space for deeper reflection. But also there might be an opportunity for us to offer an alternative viewpoint. Um, these are all gifts we have as a coach. So, you know, how can we be utilizing this to help really bring about developing more psychological safety in the spaces we work? I've just mentioned it there, really, that leadership coaching, team coaching, but that sort of continuous reinforcement that we can have with the organization as well, which will really help some of that interaction and shifting and just a different perspective on things. I'm sort of curious, we're coming towards the end and sort of drifted through some of these things. Is there any questions coming up, Liz, that might be useful to explore?
Well, I'm going to give people a chance to share some. So just to say, Paula, you asked about having a copy of the recording. So the recording will go on to the YouTube channel, so you can have a look at that. They're asking about slides, so I think we'll come back to that, Brodie, because I don't want to set you up to try and send slides to quite a lot of people who are on the webinar. But again, on the recording, you'll be able to see the slides. So let's just see if there are any more questions coming in. I mean, just as they are, Brodie, the thing that occurs to me, I mean, in systemic work, you have the idea of this peacock's tail, don't we? Of we each bring our peacock's tail of experiences. And it strikes me that, as you say, when you come together with someone else and when a team comes together, everybody's bringing all of that. And of course, the mix of that can be tremendously, as you say, fascinating, exciting, and rich. But also it can mean that, you know, for one person, someone's approach works, and for someone else, it's actually reminding them of a bad experience they had. So, as you said, creating the space that those kinds of honest conversations can be had is also really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, sometimes I work with teams and then a new team member will join and then there's that whole, so yeah, but we, you know, we're great. Da, da, da. It's like, okay, so you're used to this team. This person is new. They're sort of still navigating and making sense of it. And you may know them for many years, but it's different when you're suddenly part of a leadership team and there's a different level of pressure. And so with that impression management, you know, it's a great way to sort of like note, well, who's not speaking up? Why might that be? You know, even those conversations with a leader, well, some leaders get frustrated. Well, they don't contribute. Okay, so what is that telling you? Actually, how can you shift your approach and style to engaging with them? Some people don't like to do that in a group setting. So, okay, what conversation might you need to have beforehand? And just enabling the sort of richness that we can get from everybody's thought processes, really. And I know it's difficult and challenging as a leader because we still have to make decisions, but the best decisions will be made if we've really had an opportunity to have some really good, honest, open conversation at a deeper level. Otherwise, we just get groupthink, you know, and
Yeah.
that's not useful for anybody.
Yeah.
Um, I've got another couple of slides, Liz. One
Okay.
about me, but it's got my QR code on and people can reach out to me, but also some extra resources, which
Yeah,
might
and
be.
just to say, so there are a couple of interesting questions. So as you're going to share something, I would say to people, if you want to carry on the conversation with Brodie, please do. One in particular from Charity: can there be too much psychological safety? Does it result in can't even say it, disinhibition? So there are some really lovely questions there. But as you say, we're coming to the end. So how can people get in touch with you, Brodie? What else can they look at?
Yeah, so reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, but here's a few more other resources. Obviously, Amy's work is really powerful. If you follow her on LinkedIn, there's always a lot of interesting connections being made by other people. But there's also some more recent research on team coaching with psychological safety, and there's quite a lot at the moment in the Harvard Business Review. So there's opportunities really to really just gain a little bit more thoughts on it, really. I'm going to stop sharing because this will obviously be on the recording. I suppose the other, but just going back to, can there be too much psychological safety? I think that's probably where people are in that learning zone too much. And actually, how do you support them to get to that motivation and accountability piece? So there's that then will shift that into that learning zone.
Mm,
And actually, some people can end up being a little bit flippant if they're a bit too cozy. Sometimes we have to have that conversation about the impact on others when that happens. So
mm,
yeah, so it's there are so many nuances and it's never static.
mm,
And there are also views on actually they don't think psychological safety exists in a team environment. So while there are other people looking at this from different viewpoints. So again, just really fascinating. But I suppose
mm,
fundamentally it comes down to, do you feel that you can speak up and share things without feeling stupid or I've made a mistake or I'm not prepared to share?
mm. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. So we've reached the end. We knew that it would fly by, and it has. So thank you. So thank you so much to Dr. Brodie. I'm sure, as I said, there'll be lots of questions, lots of people reaching out to you. Thank you for
Mm.
sharing the, some of your immense knowledge and wisdom and experience. I know there's much more. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. It's been lovely to have you with us.